Kemi better not be talking to me.
Who do you think you're speaking to, Secretary of State?
Jacob cheesed off with those civil servants.
Snowflakey, work-shy.
And Justin, well, be good to have some humanity around here.
It is morally unacceptable and politically impractical to let the poorest countries deal with the crisis alone.
These are the interesting times. Hello everyone, my name's Matt Johnston and welcome to The Interesting Times, which is a show that likes to take a sideways swipe at politics right here in the UK. I'll tell you what, Kemi Badenoch didn't have the best time of it on Thursday as she was brought before the House of Lords to explain why we weren't going to have our very own Brexit benefit of cheaper fuel by burning those pesky EU laws, and also why we had to hear about it in the Telegraph first. And she got on the wrong side of the speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, who didn't appreciate her sarkiness.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very sorry that the sequencing that we chose was not to your satisfaction. I was...
Order. Who do you think you're speaking to, Secretary of State? I think we need to understand each other. I am the defender of this House and these benches on both sides. I am not going to be spoken to by a Secretary of State.
Then head of ERG, or indeed some other body part, Mark Francois, showed he wasn't prepared to stand, at least I don't think he was standing, for what he considered a climb down, like what he might have to do getting off his high chair.
Has the government performed a massive climb down on its own bill, despite having such strong support from its own backbenches? Secretary of State, what on earth are you playing at?
And the opposition then showed they could get even madder.
What an absolute shambles. I think this is the sixth different government representative at the dispatch box for this bill, and unfortunately for the Secretary of State, she's the one who's going to have to hear the words from us that no government minister wants to hear, that we told you so.
That was Shadow Minister for Employment Rights, Justin Madder MP. So what's caused all this anger? Well, it stems from this leadership campaign video from Rishi Sunak, where he put a load of documents in the shredder titled things like EU legislation and red tape. And they've decided to row back on that particular promise. Colour me shocked. So, they aren't getting rid of the EU legislation and red tape? Will we never get our sovereignty? They're even going to keep the made-up ones, you know, like the bendy banana rule. And he promised to do so in his first 100 days in office. So, who's to blame? Jacob Snuffbox knows who.
Snowflakey, work-shy civil servants probably belonging to your friends who you were quoting earlier's union.
And that's tough to hear from somebody that looks like the wimpiest dork in the class would bully in order to get him to do his Latin homework.
I was told that to deal with about 350 EU regulations, we would need 300 more civil servants working full-time for a year. I thought this was nonsense and said I could probably do them myself over a weekend.
Begging the question then, bearing in mind you were the bog-off man for 8 months, or indeed 32 weeks, why didn't you?
Kemi Badenoch put a very brave face on the failure of the civil service. If I remember rightly, it's against the ministerial code to blame the civil service, so she couldn't really have laid into them.
Well, we know how important the ministerial code is to this government. So, setting aside that calling people who are trying to help you lazy, woke, inefficient Remainer snowflakes, or branding them Machiavellian geniuses trying to unseat the government, is not the inspiring pep talk you think it is. The problem is that despite what a campaign video by a Conservative politician may tell you, putting a sheet of paper with an EU law on does not make that law go away. These are EU binding regulations, not your ex-partner's love letters. Getting rid of any regulations is tough, which is one of the reasons Labour have been, shall we say, flaky on repealing the Public Order Act or the illegal immigration bill. Once these things become law, it's a lot more difficult to deal with. For instance, the figure at the end of that video is 2,400 laws. The figure quoted by Brexiteers like Jacob Rees-Mogg, 4,000 laws. Kemi Badenoch, 800 laws that definitely need scrapping. See, we can't even agree on the numbers, never mind anything else. But I get that you're angry. You've been lied to by a Conservative government. Welcome to our world. The Archbishop of Canterbury has gone from crowning a king to clouting a clown, as he has called the immigration bill being pushed through the House of Lords immoral and unworkable.
It is morally unacceptable and politically impractical to let the poorest countries deal with the crisis alone.
Pretty much every reason then for the Tories to go pushing ahead with it. But who does this unelected individual think he is? Say these unelected individuals.
Who knew that being the Archbishop of Canterbury and therefore the head of the Church of England was a role more political than Prime Minister?
Will anyone rid me of this damn priest?
Those people feel that they're really getting that kind of leadership from the Archbishop of Canterbury.
I think he is completely and utterly out of touch with his own Anglican flock. I think he's getting far too political.
They seem to be unclear here. Justin Welby can have two jobs, like he is the Archbishop of Canterbury, but he's also a member of a group called the Lords Spiritual, a number of Anglican priests and bishops who are part of the House of Lords, which is a political body inside the Houses of Parliament, which is a political building. It's like you. You have two jobs. You are a twat, but on the other hand, you're also a cunt. The water companies are literally doing what the Conservative Party is figuratively doing, pumping their toxic crap into our beautiful country. And it's looking like people have had enough.
2 miles out to sea from the beach here, there's an outflow from the pipe, which is raw sewage. Here's the point. Every single one of us who owns a house or property has to pay for fresh water and also for wastewater. Now, so long as this sewage is still being pumped into our sea, I say we should be legally allowed to withhold the money for the wastewater.
The fines that are levied by the government are almost built into the business model. They don't actually care because they're making so much money. Meanwhile, people in Bexhill and Eastbourne are out there swimming in a word I won't even use, and you can't water your hydrangeas. This is the law that needs to come in. Any chief executive who continually allows his or her company to put raw sewage into the water, let's get this law enacted straight away, will go to jail for 5 years.
But you only know about it because the government started to talk about it, according to Helen Waitley.
My government started monitoring the outflows from sewage companies.
Oh, well, that makes it all right then.
But before nobody knew.
So, nothing to do with the fact that people are increasingly getting admitted for gastrointestinal illnesses and respiratory eye, ear and skin infections, or that the sea tends to smell like 70-day-old milk and unwashed jock straps left overnight in a sauna, or that the White Cliffs of Dover now have a tide mark. By the way, worth mentioning that the government weren't the first to introduce this. That was the EU through various directives dating back to 1980. This is simply the UK taking over the reporting, but doing nothing about it. Basically the equivalent of a Twitter account. And about as annoying. And that's it. No time to talk about this.
Every year, the TV industry has its own award ceremony. You can imagine, can't you? Big black tie dinner in London, backslapping, self-congratulation as Channel 4 wins one year and the BBC or Sky win the next. Well, TV Presenter of the Year on News is a very major award. Don't ask me how, but my name has made it to the list of runners and riders.
Wow. He's got to be the most unpopular person on that list. And Piers Morgan is on that list. Honestly, I'd rather anyone get the award before Nigel Farage. Even skip question. Never heard of him. Is he Australian? Nigel Farage, newsreader.
On the catwalk, yeah, he does his little turn on the catwalk. Get him off, Nigel. I'm too sexy.
I mean, who thought that was a good idea? And Farage is unhappy with BBC's Nick Robinson.
Now, you're now a TV host.
I am on GB News between 8 and 9 o'clock.
Well, I have to tell our
evening,
audience,
yes.
because there are not that many people that watch.
So who the hell does Nick Robinson think he is?
Watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Their viewing figures suggest otherwise. They've got less average viewers than BBC Parliament, which is essentially this.
For a summer day, finding myself swimming next to a gigantic turd.
Meaning Jacob Rees-Mogg, Lee Anderson, Esther McVeigh and Philip Davis could reach a wider audience simply by doing a couple of hours overtime. No time to talk about a person in a GIMP costume being arrested. This tall, slender and slightly creepy individual was caught by police in Somerset. Somerset? Isn't that Jacob Rees-Mogg's stomping ground? No time to talk about the Eurovision Song Contest, which was last night. And I must say, I didn't think much of the UK entry. Europe, can I have your scores, please, for Andrea Jenkins there with her rendition of a long-tailed cat stuck in a room full of rocking chairs, please. 1 point? Thank you. I think that's very generous. Oh, and in case you're wondering, that was the opening. It can only go in one direction after this. That was the opening for a new pro-Boris Johnson group called Conservative Democratic Organisation, with some pretty big hitters like Nadine Dorries. Well, you know, after she's had a couple. And I appreciate this looks like the lineup for the Irrelevance Party, but it appears that it, and certainly the thumping at last week's local elections, have made a few true blues underpants brown, as letters of no confidence have been talked about. Now, that may be nothing, and Sunak, under the current leadership rules, has 12 months before he gets kicked out. But if they change that rule, you know Sunak will be sunk. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you are enjoying these vids, then please subscribe, like, and hit all the notifications bell, and I'll see you all next Sunday. Take care.